Are you done with that Zoom? Or with that Kahoot?
Yes. I need to enter the question.
Okay, that's fine.
We'll do this puzzle.
I'm
gonna ask her if I can play with this puzzle some more because I answer this.
Yay. My calendar. Okay, it is 12:07 and I haven't seen anybody come into the Zoom class just yet. So I'm going to take this opportunity and just go over a couple of things. So bear with me while I share my screen with you. I'm going to pop out of this and into my drive. Okay, so just to give you a heads up as to what we are doing this week, we are doing some outlining and learning some basics of outlining. Let's go to so for this week, you guys have several video lecture notes that I posted throughout the past couple of weeks. And for this week, you have an outlining activity. I have previously posted the resources for outlining, and this is the link to the document. A couple of you have already done this and turned it in, so good job on that. The next thing is the quiz. There is a short quiz that is talking about interpersonal communication. A lot of it is based on the articles that we already read, the notes that we did on interpersonal communication, the communication model, and context. So that's the link as well for the quiz. And then the next thing that I want you guys to work on is just to start working on your informative speech or your expository speech. You do need to turn in a rough draft of your expository speech in the correct format. So let's go over that format now. You guys should have had the notes and the slides for all of those things, but if for some reason you can't access something, let me know. This is the slides that I posted early on in this unit, and this just tells you what goes into your outline. I also went over the presentation basics during the last video class to talk about a little bit about what we're doing, but let's just review that really quickly in case I misremembered something. So the biggest reason why we use an outline is because most professional speakers do not use an outline, or excuse me, don't memorize their speeches. Most professional speakers have an outline or a teleprompter. And a An oral formal speech is different from something in writing. So there is an element of repetition when you're giving a speech because humans don't remember things well, and you want your audience to remember your main points. And in order to do that, we need to have a little bit of repetition. So in order to do that, you're going to break it down into these three things. Tell them what you're going to tell them, which you do in your introduction. Then tell them all the details, that's your body, and then tell them what you told them. That's your conclusion. So let's break this down. The basic speech structure is composed of these three elements: the introduction, body, and conclusion. And in the introduction, this is where you gain your audience attention. It's really boring if a speaker just stands up and says, my topic is about the history of Easter or whatever it is. Give the audience something to think about. Try to find a way to connect to them. Connect to the audience by telling a little story or by asking a rhetorical question. That should be the very first thing that you say. Then you can go into your topic and your main ideas, and you just want to give a brief summary. So for example, how many of you remember being kids and waking up one Sunday morning and having colored eggs all over the house? Well, today I'm going to talk about the history of Easter, where these cultural and religious traditions started, how we use them today, and why people might choose to have these traditions or something like that. So you're going to give a quick summary of what it is that you're going to be talking about. That's what you do in your introduction. Then you move into the body of your speech. Okay, so the body of the speech is where you develop your main ideas. You want to start in the same order that you talked about in your introduction because it's really easy for people to get confused. For example, if in my introduction I said, I'm going to talk about first the history of Easter, then in the body of my speech, I would start with something like, to begin with, let's look at the history of Easter. Where does it come from? The different cultures and societies and traditions and whatever, blah, blah, blah. Now that you know a little bit about that, let's talk about how we celebrate this holiday today. And then you move on to your third point. So you do these transitions really carefully in the body of your speech. That's where you give all of your examples. Then in the conclusion, you can say something like, today we've talked about, or in conclusion, we've discussed where Easter came from. We talked about some of the common traditions, and we've also looked at whatever. And then you want to leave them with something that they can connect with. Another, like, we call it the concluding thought or final thought. And this is, again, a way to just connect with your audience. So I hope that you learned something about Easter, or I hope that the next time you celebrate this holiday, you understand why. Or if you've never celebrated Easter, now you know why. Or if you want to change your Easter traditions, here are some things. So something that the audience can really connect to. And this is really helpful to just kind of bring it all together, okay? Then, if you're not really sure kind of how to add these dynamic elements, attention getters can be challenging. I usually do my attention getter, like I will write it last, even though it's the very first thing that I'll say, because I want to get the bulk of my speech written first. And that way I can choose a meaningful attention getter that maybe is going to connect to something that I'm going to talk about later on. So you can use humor as long as you use it appropriately. You don't want to just like tell a random joke. You can use a story or an anecdote. You can tell a statistic or ask a question or even use a quote. So there are a lot of different ways to gain the audience's attention. And then in our last PowerPoint, we talked about being a dynamic speaker. You have to bring that energy. You need to sound like you care about what it is you're talking about. You don't want to be monotone. So keep in mind having good eye contact, having appropriate volume, and bringing that energy. We've talked a little bit about eye contact in the past. And if you struggle with eye contact like I did when I was taking my speech class, one thing that you can do is, I mean, obviously we're in a unique, different situation since we're doing a lot of these via video, so maybe this won't apply, but if you are speaking in front of an audience, one of the things that I like to do is just look at the tops of everybody's heads, because this way it gives the audience an opportunity to see you and see your facial expressions, but it doesn't have to be uncomfortable as if you're like staring at people. So you can look at their like hairline or the top of their head. When it comes to volume, you want to make sure that your volume is appropriate for the room and easily heard by everybody, and you want it to be appropriate for your topic too. If you were asked to give, you know, a more serious speech, or if you have a microphone or something, you want to adjust your volume. And then last is that energy also needs to be excited, but you don't want to be like, we're all cheerleaders and this is the best thing ever, because you have to have that vocal variation. You don't want to be monotone at that super high level either. We already talked a little bit about using appropriate language and avoiding, you know, jargon, colloquialisms, or slang, just because your audience may not know about that. So that is all for that one. I have provided you loads of examples of sample outlines. So if you're not really sure what your sample outline should look like, literally just copy this and plug your stuff in. And hang on one little minute. Sorry, so just copy this exactly and plug your information in this exact format, turn that in, and you'll be good to go. I have also provided for you both a reference sheet that kind of tells you what you're supposed to put into each area, but I've also included for you just like a blank one with just the formatting. You need these little indicators. These indicators are part of your outline. Obviously, like if you're doing a written essay, you would not have these indicators. If you were submitting this speech later as an essay or a paper, you would not have these indicators. But in a speech outline, you would have these indicators. So make sure you're using the proper indicators. You should have bold indicators for your introduction, body, and conclusion, like I have here. And the first thing that you type goes into your attention getter. So you would say, how many of you have listened to Ms. Cortez? Okay, that would be your rhetorical question. Today I'm going to talk about the awesomeness of Cortez, her bad jokes, and her lack of organization. Those are your 3 main points. And then your thesis would be like your overall topic. I hope you learn more about being a dynamic speaker from Ms. Cortez. So then that would be like what you would type in there. So keep that in mind, make a copy of this for yourself. Don't type over my copy because that will be sad, everybody will see it. But that will really, really help you, okay? Yeah, I'm gonna just leave it there. If you have questions, please email me. I hope that everybody is doing well. I know that Ms. Johnson is planning on having a Zoom meeting for econ. I did pass along your guys' desire to have more Zoom meetings with your teachers. So hopefully more teachers will do that. So yeah, anyways, I heart you all. Do good work, work on your outlines, and then next week I will send you a little sign up for you to present your speeches, either live in our virtual class, one-on-one with me in a Zoom, or you can record it and submit it that way. Okay, bye.